Greetings and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerers Guild. Today on Magical Theory, we are going to be discussing an experimental method of spell creation I've been working with that I refer to as the Crystal Garden method. Rather than my typical model of intent, form, charge, release, or containment, this spell actually operates on a slightly variated model. It is intent, charge, form, containment, and then a slow release over time. The mechanics of the spell are similar to what one might use in a jar. You take the components, be they herbs, or possibly even just a sigil, target sample, whatever it is that you need to add, and you place these things in a jar. But then, rather than simply adding oils, herbs, or urine, whatever, depending on your intent, and then sealing the jar and allowing the energy to condense inside the jar simply because it is contained, what we do is, after you've added the ingredients, you add super saturated salt water, heated up, into the container, and allow the salt crystals to form around the objects inside the jar. Now, as you're adding the ingredients, this is when you're adding the original charge. So you will be putting the ingredients in, and of course, thinking about what each one does as it is added into the container, and adding the charge as you do so, but you are not creating the form of the spell. The form of the spell will be created by the crystals as they form inside of the container. I have found that there are two major advantages to operating with this method, even though it is sometimes a little slower than other methods because the crystals have to evaporate over a small period of time. I have, however, found that this may not be the case, and it simply grows with intensity as the crystals form. But as I said, there are two distinct advantages that I have noticed so far. Number one is, as you link the spell to the situation you are trying to affect, this, of course, links the salt itself to the spell, and as the crystals are forming, this creates the form of the spell. Now, the crystals being linked to the situation, their formation is affected by how the situation is occurring and what is going on in that situation. And therefore, as they are formed, they affect the spell's form, and it makes it so that the spell is actually responsive to the situation and is able to form in accordance with what needs to occur in order for your intent to form. So it creates a responsive spell without any of the concerns that are involved with a servitor, egregore, or etc. There's no need to disperse the creature. There's no need to even create a creature because there's no intelligence involved. It is simply the crystal formation responding to the situation you are trying to affect, which then in turn affects the formation of the crystals. Now, I said there's a second advantage. The second advantage is that as you watch these crystals form, you can actually divine from them in a similar method as you would melting wax or anything like that, where you look for images or shapes or just a sense of understanding of how the formation is occurring, be it salt crystals or wax, and this will tell you how the spell is going and give you ideas if there's anything you need to add to the spell or anything like that. And of course, another interesting aspect is if you add more salt and water, these spells can continue to grow. And I have some examples of that here, and I have used this in several different methods. This one here is actually a shrine to one of my grandfathers. The button in the middle, which you can barely see now, is from one of his shirts that he liked to wear. So that's part of the components involved. Underneath that is a specifically interesting piece of petrified wood that came from a ghost town that I didn't go while we were together, but that I went to after he was gone and thought of him while I was there. as somewhere he would have enjoyed going with me. And then the geode on top is something I actually did find on an adventure with him. So these are all things that are connected to my grandfather, and there's actually a link to him through the button. And then as I contemplated this to create the charge, I added the supersaturated salt water and allowed it to condense over time, allowing this bowl to create a form of an opening to allow his Ka, or ghost, to come and visit our family, because we were already, many of us, having dreams that he was coming, trying to communicate with us. So I created this crystal garden to facilitate that communication. I also have some other chalice type spells that I have worked with. However, they are less transportable because, as I said earlier, where you can continue a spell over time, with those ones I often add more salt and more water over time, allowing the spell to become larger and keep growing. And I also have one on my altar where I'm creating a larger crystal. I don't have the top half available to show because it's on my altar. If I try to move it, it could become damaged. But I have salt up on the top, in which there's also a hagstone, which is a stone with a small hole in it that functions as an altar. Or, excuse me, not as an altar, but as a portal. And I have linked the other side of that portal to my astral platform, as we discussed in the Lucid Dream, episodes. And on that side, I have spell work that I do, that I then focus on coming through the hagstone and into the upper chamber of the crystal garden, where I then add salt and red and blue dyes to create purple, my octa-ring color. And as those colors, and as the salt condenses around, it goes out the edge of the bowl, down a thread, and is creating a larger crystal underneath, which then reflects down into this crystal garden that I have here, drips down into this crystal garden I have here, which is intended to then magnify and reflect my will out onto the larger area of my altar itself, facilitating my work with dreams and any work that I do on the astral realm or through my platform in any way. And of course, as the salt condenses inside the reflector, it creates the form of the spell, which changes over time as new salt water drips in. But that creates the form of the spell, and then it is reflected by the mirror-like surface inside of the silver-colored bowl. Okay, so it looks like we're running low on battery, so that will be it for today. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Don't forget to join us on Friday, where I will do a demonstration of the Crystal Garden method and one of the cups, as I discussed, was what was not able to show you. I will also provide a link here for for more video of the crystal gardens that I have already discussed. Okay, so until then, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tal.